welcome to Bite-Sized Conversations with myself, Jenni Walke from Elephant in the Room Consulting, and my digital BFF, Kylie Mowbray-Allen. It's so nice to see you here from Hello Media.
Yay, glad we're here, Jenni, on another beautiful Friday morning. Although not so beautiful here, it is absolutely pouring down. And apparently we might have some flooding over the weekend.
Yes, I noticed that this morning we had a flood warning here, but ours thankfully is sort of southwest, not thankfully, but southwest Queensland. We're in southeast Queensland, so we're okay, but it is a miserable grey day outside. So it's a perfect day to be on Facebook, watching us on Zoom or Facebook and having a chat about our businesses.
That's exactly right. I do love a rainy day for getting stuff done.
I know. It's actually one of my favorite things. I've decided that I did this yesterday afternoon. I was feeling a bit off this week. I had the best massage I've ever had in my life as a sport massage. But because of the incredible work that he did in the morning, I think I just released so much crap into my body. I was feeling quite unwell. So I kind of just I'm going to hunker down in my office and just kind of work slowly through stuff. It was raining outside and it was actually the perfect excuse just to stay in.
I love it. I love it so much. I especially love it on a weekend when I can just watch movies and not feel guilty for not.
And a rug, a nice, that old school kind of rug. This is where I miss being in Canberra. Where in Canberra, I had a beautiful fireplace or open fireplace. And so in winter in Canberra, which of course is very, very cold, there's nothing nicer than to have, that stoking the fire on a winter's day in Canberra and sitting on the couch with a rug. It was, I totally miss those days. We don't do that here in Queensland. I can't imagine why.
Well, we totally do love our fireplace in winter, but it's definitely not a long enough season.
No, it is certainly not long enough. I mean, it's not like, European or American winters that go for quite some months and you actually get to enjoy that kind of snuggle time.
Yes, that's right. So Jenni, our topic of the day is words and language. And as soon as you just said about hunkering down, and I thought, wow, great little segue there, because so many people call it hunkering and just as many people call it bunkering.
Oh, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Bunkering down, etc. So isn't language a funny thing, the way that we do it? And I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about the weirdness of social media, texting and all that kind of thing. It's really highlighted where people are at with their spelling and grammar and and all that kind of thing. And I put a post out on socials about when you see somebody has spelt, something wrong in their caption or wrong grammar or something, do you mention it? Do you ignore it? Whatever. And it was amazing how many people said, of course I tell them. I send them a private message. Other people, one person actually said, I never would do that. It's, it would be hurtful or whatever. And I thought that's an interesting thing because from time to time I've made a little error and I've actually really appreciated when someone sent me a message because I don't want my stuff going out there, not being right. So
I saw a website yesterday and I've been looking at a website this week and I've been looking at the same website this week and there was about 18 spelling mistakes across the website and like significant number. And I was like, okay, so half of me is going, are you looking at, is it more about a language issue? Because of course, if you're putting it in a different language that you are, then sometimes your grasp of English is not 100%. So therefore you're writing as you would, I guess, as a second or third or fourth language, maybe. But for someone who is an English speaker as their first language, I get very frustrated when I see spelling mistakes or particularly grammatical errors. I had this conversation with my partner earlier this week simply about the word there. Which there are you talking about? Is it they are? Is it there with an EI, or is it there ERE? So simple things like that. And that's, I think, comes from our experience, isn't it? For my family, words were everything. If I wanted to spell a word from the age of 10, I'd say to my dad, how do you spell hunkering? And he'd say, I don't know, let's look it up. So we would go to the dictionary and it was a green old dictionary and we would look up the word and he would make me find it in the dictionary and read out the definition. So I think that's why words are so important to me now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that we've possibly lost that need to get it right because now it's just accepted. Everything we do is text this, message this, whatever. And we're actually doing it all very fast. We're not taking the time to get it right. It's interesting. And I'm well aware there's, issues out there, people with dyslexia, et cetera, and spelling is not their forte, and it doesn't need to be. But hello, we have Grammarly, we have spell checks, we have all kinds of things. And you said before about, maybe if English is not your first language or something. And I thought, you know what though? And I was teaching a course yesterday on Canva. And we were having a look. One of the people in the course had recently done a course on blogging. And she said, honestly, Kylie, it was just terrible. So, oh no. She said, go and take a look at her website. So we went and had a little look, and excuse me, she, of course, said, oh, sorry, a little choke. She, of course, said that, she was an expert in this, and she did SEO, and she did website overhauls and all these things, yet hadn't done it to her own. So it was full of grammatical errors. It was full of spelling mistakes. There were links that didn't work, et cetera. And I just thought, it's very interesting. Now, I know for a fact that woman English is not her first language, but get somebody to check it over, get someone to look at it for you and make sure that you're getting it right.
And I think it goes back to who's your market, isn't it? If your market is predominantly English speaking, then you need to make sure that it's written for them. If your market is not predominantly English speaking, put it in your primary language or the language of your market, and then let Google Translate make the mistakes, so you're not making the mistakes. And so I think we expect, because we live in Australia, that every website should be in English. But the reality is, it's about your market, isn't it? And ultimately, if I'm in Germany, or I'm in, the Ukraine, or I'm in, even France, and my client base is local speaking people, it doesn't need to be in English. And I think we forget that. And then that's where Google Translate can, make the mistakes. The grammar might not be right, but the spelling will at least be okay if Google's doing the translation. But I think we have to think of the market, and that comes back to the type of language that we use. I feel like I have this compelling need after this session to go and Google the difference between hunkering down and bunkering down, and I will do that just because my brain is now thinking about that, right? Because that's important to me. So I think we have to, it goes back to the conversations we've had so often before about what does your market expect from you? What are you showing up as? I'm a business coach. My job is and I'm a business consultant. I write reports to people. I write, responses to grant applications and tender responses. It needs to be written correctly. It needs to have the right language at the right time in the right way. So it becomes an important element of my business. So it wouldn't be right for me to turn up and be using things like apostrophe cos or all the wrong things or colloquialisms on my social media or my content, because it doesn't fit my brand.
Yes, absolutely. It's about it fitting your brand. Yeah. So one of the fun things when you're writing for other brands is getting it right for their brand and getting the right vibe and the right feel and the right words. So when you said colloquialism, and I thought, yes, interesting. So I would do that for my own. I would do the, am I right? With all being as one word, but I wouldn't put that necessarily on a client's post, for example. So getting it right is so important. And then I just thought about bite-sized conversations. So when we first were talking about it and, hey, let's call it this, et cetera, and we both had these chats going, is it bite-sized or is it bite-sized? And we were Googling it and it said, it could be either. We went with bite-sized. Ever since we did that, I've often thought, I wish we'd done bite-sized. I really do. But the only way I've been able to get my head around it is actually we're taking a bite size. We're not talking about necessarily. Yeah, does that make sense?
Well, to me, it's about the timing. It's bite-sized in time. The conversation isn't bite-sized. The time is bite-sized. And so that was exactly how I had the conversation in my head. But I think it goes to our conversations that we've had, because you and I both write content for clients, and we both, and obviously for ourselves. And we're so particular about writing our own content. Even though we write for other clients, we like to make sure that we're writing our content so that we've at least it's our flavor and our feeling in it. But I think it's, in my view, the language that you use and the content that you produce, whether it's verbally in written form or whatever format, is part of your business structure. And that, to me, is why it's so important. Your language that you use, how you present yourself through words, actually forms part of the structure of your business, because it becomes a foundational piece about how people connect with you, how they relate to you. It's not just the photos that you use, it's not just the product, it's actually this conversation that makes people decide, do I like that person? Are they my people? Do I want to lean in and play with them? Or is it someone else that I want to prefer to go to?
Yes, so true. So one of my amazing team members, Merlin, she's really on top of all the customer service and the client liaison and that kind of stuff. And so, for example, I did a discovery call the other day with this amazing woman. And, you get me as I am now, you get me the same in a discovery call and the same in a coaching anything. Well, I just am who I am. And so we're chatty and we're this and we're this and we're this. So then I need to know that then the email that Merlin is following up with is also going to be super friendly, super like, yay, so keen to work with you, et cetera, et cetera. Now for my team, whether it's Merlin or anyone else, the important thing is that she's able to be authentic to herself, because at the end of the day, it's going from herself, but it also needs to have the same vibe, the same energy, the same, what would you say? Words.
For me, it's the same structure.
Yes,
it actually comes down to the structure, the way that you the way you compose your sentences, the types of words that you use, the format, even down to the format of the email. Are you, a one sentence person, which is not a paragraph, but you like to do one sentence kind of heroes, questions or statements followed by paragraphs? Is it you doing long form information, or is it kind of bite size, or is it dot points, or for you, one of the biggest things in your language is your emojis. That forms part of, so an email from Hello Media that doesn't have an emoji in it, to me, I'd be like, she's being spammed. This is not a Hello Media email, because that's part of who you are as a brand. So I think that structure is so critical to make sure there's consistency. So the words can be a little different, but there's a structure to the way that we produce the information. I
totally love how you've said that. So yes to structure. So I don't want it all just, a big long one sentence, which so many people do these days, because it's, but for me, particularly being a designer, and it's all about the look and feel of something, it also needs to be beautifully laid out. So it's really clear to read and looks fun. And so for me, for my business, the vibe needs to be a bit of fun. It needs to be a bit of lightness. It needs to be helpful. So the words, the language, the structure, the set out, all those things are important. And who would have thought, right, that an email response is so important as part of that customer journey?
Yeah. And it is, because it reminds people to say, you didn't just take my money and then forget me, right? It's actually, you've taken my money, or we've had a conversation, and now the journey is actually, it gets real then. It's now, this is how I'm going to be showing up for you in the next 6, 9, 3 months, however long the program is. And it actually sets the tone for your whole relationship. And we do often forget that. I forget that sometimes, particularly the types of work that I do, particularly with the consulting pieces. But what I've started to do, as soon as someone sends me a contract, I'll send them back saying, hey, the contract's signed. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to work with you. And I'll put something in. That's not me forcing that. That's just become my habit, because I know these guys are trusting me to deliver a piece of work for them. And I want to make sure that they feel that they're in safe hands. So how I communicate that is through that. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to it. Let me know what else I can do. Those little things just make people feel safe and that they've made the right decision.
Totally. It takes us right back to that know, like, and trust thing, doesn't it? So 100%. They've been watching you, they've been deciding, do I want to reach out? Do I want to, make that call, or do I want to book that Zoom, or do I want to go into that shop, or whatever it is? And then deciding, I like you, so yes. And then deciding, do I trust you? And then, yes, I'm going to buy from you or work with you, et cetera, et cetera. So,
I used to write content for a number of clients earlier in the year, and I don't write this content as much as I used to. And I know you're very similar to that as well. But what I found is, when I used to write content, there were a couple of clients who I would spend some time and really deep dive into who they were and make sure I'm using language off their website or their program details, so that there's consistency in the way that I'm presenting their business. But then there are other clients that I would write doing exactly the same thing, and then they would rewrite almost all the captions. And it would be every month, they'd be like, well, you almost got it right this time. I really wanted to say this. And all my brain was saying is, if you're spending this much time rewriting my captions, then why aren't you writing it yourself? And it was this block that they had, that they couldn't actually start the process, but they knew what they didn't want, but they needed to see it before they actually knew that. And so part of my decision to no longer write captions, or to say, well, why don't we just give you caption starters? Let's actually not write them for you, because it's not going to ever be in the same way, because I'm only seeing you and talking to you for 25 to 30 minutes a month. Versus the clients that we do the deep dive content development with, where we're talking with them every day or a couple of days a week, where we're starting to know how they speak and we're starting to know who they are. And I find that with my team, we've got with Macy knows how I speak. So Macy knows how the business speaks. And I think that's the distinction. We as businesses, hello media, elephant in the room, we have to learn how the business speaks, because we may speak differently outside the business, but it's how the business speaks is what's important at the end of the day, not whether we liked a particular word in a particular place. Did the business need it there?
That's so totally right. So it just all comes back to your branding, doesn't it? And using
it really does.
So you know full well I'm a shocker with bad language. I love an F-bomb. I really do. And I say it with so much emphasis.
Yeah, I do too.
In a fun sense or in a bad sense or anyway. But in business, that is not what I do. I do not. It doesn't feel right for me at all. And I don't write it as part of captions. And I try never to say anything that's kind of a triggering word for people in my coaching sessions, etc. So it's a really, really interesting one, isn't it? Those businesses that decide that should be part of their branding, and those that decide no. And I'm not saying that one way is right or the other, but it needs to be right for your business.
But it goes to show really clearly how language can polarize or attract people so quickly. Because my partner is the same. This amazing masseuse that I went to yesterday morning, he'd met me for I think 3 minutes and dropping the F-bomb, dropping this, say, because everything was just not good. And so he's like, oh yeah, this is going to be this, and he was so relaxed, and that was just him, that was his entire personality. But if someone came into and did a discovery call with me and had a conversation and I spoke like that to them, they'd be like, who is this person? They are not, this is because it doesn't fit the environment. So we also have to think about the context in which we're talking. In a one-on-one conversation, when you're deep down getting real with clients, sometimes that language works because it's about saying, hey guys, I need you to listen to me. And you don't hear me say this often, so I'm actually now going to be like, calling bollocks on them, right? And so sometimes you need to do that. But then you have to consider the context, and because language can polarize so abruptly that some people will be like, I'm never going back to that masseuse because God, he was like swearing like a trooper. Whereas I'm like, he's so in joy and flow about his stuff. He's just like, he can see it all. And he's like, this is amazing. And he was lit up when we were talking about it because he was so excited about breaking down knots and recognizing the problems. And I'm like screaming in pain going, this is amazing. But for some people, they wouldn't deal with that.
I love that so much, Jenni. I recently had a session, and so did my daughter. So it was fascinating. And she was called a massage therapist, but I walked into her space and I was like, wow, that's a lot of certificates. Literally every part of her walls was certificates. And I said, how many are there? And she said, 219. I was like, goodness gracious me.
It was 19 of what? Doing what?
Every course she could have ever done, from kinesiology to just you name it. There was everything there. So anyway, I lay on the bed and she starts whispering into my ear and she said, it's not going to be like anything you've ever had before. And you might cry or you might laugh, or you might be in terrible pain, but I want you to say to me, each time I maneuver you, I want you to say, you're a bitch. And I was like, I don't think I can do that. She's like, oh, yes, you will. And so she's, doing something to maneuver like in my spine or something. She's got her head close to her mouth close to my ear. And she's going, say it now. Call me a bitch.
Oh my goodness gracious, that's crazy town.
There you go.
Wow.
sandwich in a, for her brand that was working for her, but I wasn't resonating with it all. And what was funny is that my daughter had the session before me, and I thought, I can't wait to talk with her about it on the way home, because she would not have liked that.
Oh. What a bold choice though, isn't it? That's a bold choice.
Very
it's like,
bold
wow.
branding going on there. But Jenni, there's another topic about words that I'd love to bring up as well, which is around positive and negative words. So I haven't, and obviously when you've got more than yourself in your business, you want to make sure that everybody's on board with what are the company messages, what's the company language that you use, et cetera, et cetera. So some of the words in my company that's an absolute no-no are words like don't forget. Now, how that would be ridiculous to some people, like what's wrong with that? But I want to use the word remember, not the word don't forget, because don't forget is a negative. And what are we all, what are the words out of that our subconscious picks up is the forget.
Yeah.
Forget. So we're going to forget. If you say remember, what's the one that we're going to take on is remember. Yeah. So there's little bits and pieces around that. And that's only one example, but that to me is so important. And it can be quite triggering for me when I see don't forget, like in somebody's Facebook ad, and the first word is don't forget. And I'm like, oh, buddy, you just lost me, really.
Well, it's interesting. There's actually some research into that too, though, about particularly in those things like the word no or don't do it, is that your brain, and I don't know where the research is and I can find it, is that the brain doesn't actually register the word don't. So your brain doesn't even see or recognize or understand the word don't. So all it sees is that forget or don't remember, or whatever the one after is. They actually don't. So if it says don't remember it, they remember it because they ignore the word don't. So It's really interesting though. Sometimes we have to think it's not just about the words we like to use, it's what's the impact on the client and on the customer or the audience. I think that's such a really important point, is that what are we trying to inspire or evoke or do with the words that we want to do? If you want a positive outcome with your clients, if you want engagement, you need to use words that resonate with that. We talk about think and wonder. I try not to use the word think these days, because think to me is limiting, whereas wonder is everything. And so they're very different words, but deliberately so. The word think is like, think about it. I want them to actually trigger what's in their brain. Wonder, I want them to go to imagination. So in the same way, words like don't or you shouldn't, or these are 5 things you should never do. That kind of, I look at that even sometimes and go, oh, okay. But if I've never done them before and now you've told me what the 5 things are, they're now in my brain. So
yes, you need to turn it around to 5 things you should always do.
Exactly, right. And so that's going to relate to me so much more. I completely agree with negative behavior, negative wording.
And what about God? So not the topic of God, but the OMG. So that's one that I never use in business either. And that's largely because when my daughter was 4 and my husband was doing his year-long stint in hospital, she said, oh my God, about something in an excited way. This nurse who we absolutely loved, we thought she was just fabulous. She was so great with Clover always, but she pulled Clover aside really roughly and she said, don't you ever say that again. Do you have any idea how much that's hurting God's feelings? That's a terrible thing to say, on and on and on it went. Anyway, Clover was just freaked out. I took her aside and I said, look, yes, it's a word that we'll talk about that later on, but that lady shouldn't have been so harsh with you, but, Anyway, that was my first experience of someone that was so offended and affronted by that. So since then, I've been really conscious of OM goodness or OM goddess, but not the oh my God or the OMG, because there's certainly a number of people out there that are absolutely appalled by that language.
And I'd agree with you in that, particularly in this relationship, because religion is such a triggering thing for so many people. And again, comes back to the market. If you go traditionally, if you ever watched any television from the US, you do not use the word God. You do not use the word in that kind of blasphemy, because blasphemy is, and in many cultures, to use the name in vain is a really bad form of blasphemy. So I think it comes back to your market as well, and saying that if you've got a market where that's okay, then sure, you can play with that words, but know that there's a lot of people that you're going to polarize again by using that. And also, you don't know who's seeing your work. You don't know who's seeing this post, particularly on social media. This could be everywhere, and in some countries, it could be incredibly offensive. And so I think, like the nurse said to Clover, we have to be really mindful of the impact, not just in our space, but our broad area of influence. And often we just think about, oh, well, it's on, I only have 100 people on my Facebook page, or I only have two viewers on YouTube, or whatever it might be. But that's what you have now. You don't know what the influence you're going to have in the future. And so being mindful of not just where you are today, but the influence you want to make in 5 or 10 years, or in that kind of legacy piece, using language that you know is going to be divisive is actually setting you up to polarize people. And if that's your choice, that's okay. But you just have to be, I think you just have to be mindful of that.
Definitely. And for me personally, in my personal life, in my business life, and anything, I don't want to offend people. I know that I can be, possibly quite offensive at times, and it's, a bit of whatever. But on the whole, I don't actually want to offend you. So if OMG is real, oh my God, is really going to be offensive to you, I don't want to do that. That would make me sad that I had caused that issue. Yeah. So how easy is it for me to just not use that word, or just to change it to, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So that's a really,
I completely agree with you.
I saw a post last night from someone that we both have in common in business life, that we've met many times, and he's extremely anti-vaccine and anti-lockdown and all those kinds of things. And I've noticed that his posts have been less and less and less about his specialty in business, which is extraordinary, and more about that stuff. And then last night he put a post up that I felt was like the absolute top of the mountain, I hope, for him, and that it's gonna have to change, because he screenshotted a company and he tagged the company in it, and he said, I hope no one ever stays with you again. I hope from here on, an Airbnb is going to be on a win, because no one will stay with any hotels that lock out people that haven't been vaccinated. And the hotel that he particularly showed was hotels that have been doing hotel quarantine. And he said, you are disgusting, you are this, you are that, because you've taken money for lies, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you as a business, that's an extraordinary stance to take. And then on the same thing of that, there's also a dance teacher that I know who's been doing the same kind of thing. So all of her stories, all of her everything on Instagram has been about anti-vaccine, anti-this, anti-that. And it actually made me really sad, because I thought, you're a big influencer for young kids. I know when my daughter was dancing, and when she would come in and do guest choreography pieces and things, they just idolized her. And I thought, whether you're pro-vax, anti-vax, or whatever you are, that's really extreme when you know that those children are really influential at this stage. Yeah. So, and it wasn't just anti-vax, like it's some really big stuff she's putting out there. So I think as a business, you've just got to be so mindful of, again, as you said, who is your audience, but also, why am I doing this? What am I posts for? What am I putting things out there? If you want to put that stuff out there, put it on your personal, perhaps, or chat about it with your friends, but putting it on your business page is really extreme, I think.
Well, I think, and it goes back to that point earlier about language, isn't it? I have a personal Facebook page. Most of us do, or all of us do. We have our business page. And so my business page is about sharing, living the way that I want to, my business, encouraging others to kind of learn and engage and work with us, so that we can actually, help them build the life that they want. So the language that I'm putting on there should be about those two things: wisdom, freedom, and, that piece, abundance. What I do on my personal page, though, is about where I share values. So it's photos of generally my dog and my family, going on holiday, taking a break, all the things that actually speak to me and the people around me. Now,
why? You're why?
That's exactly right. And so that piece there, so if you want to share those thoughts, that is definitely the place to do it, because the business is not you. And I think we often forget that, yes, even for me, I'm the managing director of Elephant in the Room Consulting. It's my business. I have some people who work with me, and it's still my business, but it's still an arm's length business. I'm a proprietary limited company. I'm arm's length from Jenni Walke. Jenni Walke is just somebody who works at the company. I might be the owner, but it's not my company. The company has its own persona. And so often we get our persona mixed into the company persona, and they are two separate entities. They're legally two separate entities, so therefore they should behave like two separate entities. And I think they can influence each other, but your personal, in the same way, if an employee comes to work and starts sharing information that's potentially offensive, that doesn't stay in the office. And that's how I see the segmentation between what you do on your business page and what you want to do on your personal page. It's your personal space. That's freedom. Your business page is not about you. It's about your clients and serving your industry.
Absolutely, I agree. It's not about you. It's who it is out there that you're helping and serving, etc. Who you want to attract to work with you or buy from you or shop with you, etc.
And the whole COVID thing, to be honest, here in Queensland, and you would have seen that, I think the challenges that we're having around, and it is going to create this divide. There's so much fear around the vaccine. There's so much fear about, if I don't get vaccinated, I'll become a second-class citizen. Even that language, we're talking about words and language today, the language people are using around pro and anti-vaccines or pro and anti, all these, the situation that's happening, and are you in or are you out? We're using this divisive language, and I think one of the challenges we're going to have as a community going forward, both as a business community and personally, is how we actually don't, yes, it's your personal view, it's your choice, you have a choice in some respects, but we also have to consider the broader community and the broader impact across not just us, but on a global scale of the influence we're having. And so I think looking at language that's not divisive, share your ideas, but do it in a way that invites conversation and curiosity rather than the negativity, like you said earlier.
Yeah, absolutely, Jenni. And speaking of that and those polarizing things, etc., I think we discussed a couple of weeks ago that it'd be great to do a topic around rules and guidelines. For example, Facebook rules, Facebook community guidelines, Instagram rules, and talk about some of those changes that are happening, some of those things actually that have never changed, that have always been the case, but we can tend to ignore them. Also, you might have heard that there's the new Twitter Blue coming out, which is a paid service, and what happens with rules around that, and the new rules in Facebook groups, and there's all kinds of things going on. So
definitely the one that we're going to talk about next week, hopefully, because I think it follows on really nicely for words, because it's that issue, isn't it? You say things, you use language that you don't realize is offensive, or you don't realize breaches some community guidelines. And next thing you know, you don't have a Facebook account, you don't have a Twitter account, you're locked off LinkedIn. I mean, looking at LinkedIn has all the rules around keeping people within, and I've had people put in LinkedIn jail for months because they were putting too many external links or not writing the right content or using their content inappropriately. So I think and the rules of engagement on the social platforms is so important to learn how we can actually maximize the value for us and for our business.
Definitely. Jenni, I just did a post last night. Jump over and find it if you can in the Hello Media Facebook group, which is all about, it's mostly really about ads, but how you no longer will be able to use sensitive topics.
So I saw that was crazy.
Race, ethnicity, political affiliation, religion, sexual orientation, like it's quite extreme. But the one interesting one for me is that, for example, health causes, you can't talk about lung cancer awareness or World Diabetes Day, etc. Like it's going to be very, very interesting.
And very restrictive, isn't it? It's going to change the way people are actually engaging on the platforms, because I've got a number of clients who I've worked with who are very specific niche markets, and we talk about when they want to use ads, or if they're looking to try and search for those arrangements, you need to use those niche words or those niche groups. So for Facebook or for Meta to make the choice as to what we can choose and what we can't choose and how we connect with people is a really interesting step.
Yes, so I've got a couple of wedding celebrant clients, and why should they be able to then do Facebook ads talking about getting married, but not talk about same-sex marriages? Like that to me is almost you're going back down the road of discrimination. So it's an interesting one. So let's have a chat about rules and guidelines. And
love it. I'm looking forward to listening to you share what the updates are.
I look forward to that too, especially considering that my Facebook is still banned and blocked for going against community guidelines of having a team member log in to me. So fascinating. And now there's a new thing going on with Instagram. So my team aren't logging into my Instagram. because I have to do facial recognition to get in.
Wow.
Yeah, there are big
isn't it?
changes afoot, that's for sure. And I'm
interested to see what's going to happen with influence with that particular one, because if you think about the influencers accounts that are on the system, those influencers that they're putting under personal accounts, I know that some of them are listed as a business account, but the influencers that have personal accounts who are not doing their own posting, who are not doing that work, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the change in rules and how it's going to impact them on particularly Instagram.
And you know that the Instagram thing I mentioned that's the business account. That's not my personal.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah. And when has that ever been a problem, that you can't actually have other people logging into your business? Very
that is really interesting, because I didn't realize it was on the business account. So that's going to change the world, because the whole point of when you grow and scale your business, and pretty much every business coach, me included, talk about creating a team and delegating the work that you don't need to do. So you might write the content, which I do, but my team help curate the images and they post for me, because that allows me to spend more time working with clients. So that's going to be a really interesting shift if it's now going to be business accounts that have to only be the owner of the account.
It's super interesting. So of course there's ways around that by using all the different platforms and stuff.
Yeah.
But then what about you wanting to do some engaging, and you want, anyway, yeah, as you know,
crazy.
It's definitely challenging times out there.
It is. Well, thank you. This has been such a fun chat today. Yeah. We've talked about words. We've talked about Facebook rules. We've talked about, bias and negativity. It's actually, and the words that you should or should not use. There's that word again. I'm really excited to hear about how that's going to impact how we actually show up and the way we use and engage with the rules next week when we talk about Facebook and community rules.
Awesome. I look forward to it, chatting with you then, Jenni. So how can people find you, Jenni?
They can find me at Elephant in the Room AU on Facebook and Insta. If you type in at Elephant in the Room in Google, all the platforms will come up. Connect with me, reach out, have a chat. We'd love to see what you do.
Awesome.
And how about you?
You can go straight to the website, hellomedia.team, and then find all the links from there and connect with us particularly in my Facebook group, Hello Media. It's my favorite place to hang out. And that's where I'm constantly putting algorithm updates and, awesome. Just things like that to keep people on top of it, because not everybody needs to read endless blogs and journals about every nitty gritty thing.
And that's why we have you. And BFF, you keep us up to date with everything that we need to know about social media engagement, and particularly in the space with the online platform. So we very much, if you're not in the Hello Media group yet, you need to reach out to Kylie and work out how to do that, because it's definitely worth connecting with, because the information you put up there is priceless.
Thanks, Jenni. I love the word priceless. That's a great one. Thank you. Well, I look forward to chatting with you next line about community guidelines and all of that. And you have a wonderful rainy day and a great weekend.
And thanks everyone for watching. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.